One thing I've had to learn is I've gotten older, but the game stays young. I was listening to an interview from an aging athlete. He's older in athlete standards, not really by age, but when you're a professional athlete, then obviously you start getting older as far as how society looks at it in sports. And so he was talking about his different techniques, and he's had a lot of success over the career. And he stopped. At first he was showing his different moves and stuff and his approach to the game, and then he stopped and he said, one thing I've had to learn is I've gotten older, but the game stays young. And I think many times, man, I think in sales we forget that. I think that we forget that we're getting older. It's kind of like we're like that old Southern preacher man who's 75 years old but has jet black slick back hair, and it's like coal black, and you're like, come on, bro, let the grays come through, man. Dude, we're getting older, dude. Look, I got the gray in the beard. I just noticed the other day, man, I'm starting to get gray in the eyebrows. I'm like, oh no. And but hey, dude, we're getting older, and the game of sales stays young. It stays young. And it's going to forever be young. And so I think we lose sight of that. And you've got to learn how to adjust your game accordingly. And you got to do it in 3 different ways, man. You got to do it mentally, you got to do it physically, and you got to do it technically. And that's what I want to talk about, man. The first part is the mental part of it. And many veteran salesmen are so rigid in thought. Don't talk about back in the days, man. Don't talk about how easy things were back then, because you know what? When it was back then, it was hard for you then. See, and it's always easier in hindsight. It's always tougher when you talk in foresight. When you're looking ahead, it always seems tougher, but then when you talk about back in the days, how easy it was. But let me tell you something. 15 years ago, you were griping about how hard things were then too. So the first thing, the mental part of it, don't tell me how it used to be back in the days, okay? Here's the difference. Old salespeople, veteran salespeople, talk about what was. New salespeople talk about what's next. They're like ADD, bro. They're like bouncing off the walls, and they're just, what's next? Where's the next customer? What's the next thing? Hey, is anybody working about it? I mean, you got anything else for them? Dude, it's like they can't even finish their sentences fast enough before they're jumping on to the next thing. Dude, you have to have that next mentality. What's next? What's the next thing? And you've got to stay mentally fluid, okay? And it's like sometimes we get injected with cement in our minds as far as veteran salespeople, and it just hardens up. And it's almost as if those cement trucks, and those cement trucks, you never see that big cylinder on the back of the truck stop. If it stops, there's nothing. If it stops, then there's nothing in there. But if it stops and there's something in there, then what's it going to do? It hardens. So that cement truck has to constantly be spinning to keep the contents fluid. So that way when it opens up and pours out, it pours out and is movable. That is you, dude. So many times as a veteran salespeople, man, when someone pops your lid, okay, and you try to dump out information, it is so hardened and expired that you can't form it. You can't shape it up. There's nothing. So you've got to stay fluid in thought. You've got to stay fluid mentally. And just look at what's next, man. There is so much technology available to you today, resources that, dude, learn something. And you don't have to read. Learn it through your ears. Learn it through a conversation. Have a conversation with a younger salesperson. Have a conversation with your customers. Your customers will teach you a lot. Have conversations, watch videos, listen to podcasts. Just, bro, something new, something fresh. You've got to have a fresh perspective. And it starts one day at a time, man. Just do one thing new today and then go on to the next thing the next day. Okay? So you got to stay mentally, man. You got to stay mentally fluid. The next thing is the physical part. You can't eat like you used to. Okay? You can't. You cannot feed your body this crap, these dollar wieners, foot long coney dogs. You can't feed your body that and expect to have maximum results. Dude, understand, raise your right hand with me right now. And I'll fill in the blank, Marsh Buice, am older and acknowledge that the game stays young. If the game is young, then you can't stop the aging, but you can stop the process of feeding your body something that is actually not going to be beneficial for you. So you've got to increase your stamina. You've got to be able to increase your physical part of it. Dude, take 30 minutes every single day and go do something, man. Go bust a sweat. One of my mantras is bust a sweat every single day. And if it's 10 minutes or 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour, whatever. Because see, I've got to push those physical boundaries so that way it pushes my mental boundaries. See, it all connects together. And it keeps my game elevated. It keeps me in the grip. It keeps me adaptive and fluid and moving. And then the last thing, man, is the technical side of it. You remember the old school rapper Rakim. One of his famous songs was "Don't Sweat the Technique." I remember listening to it growing up. Of course, I'm talking about back in the day now. But one of his hit singles was "Don't Sweat the Technique." But when he just wrote a book, he just had a book come out. You know what the name of the book was? Sweat the Technique. Bro, the technique is everything. The technique keeps you adaptive to this game. Buyer tendencies have changed. The processes have changed. Everything in sales is a lot faster. It used to be customers came to the salesperson for information. Now they have the information. They need you to help break it down. But you've got to be willing to learn the technical side of it. You got to know something about your product, man. And look, you'd be surprised how many salespeople are scared to push a certain button because it's like it's just going to blow up on their product. Learn that product, man. Take one product, your best seller. Take one product and learn that one product. And I'm telling you, it's going to bleed on to other things too. It'll bleed on, meaning that you learn this one product and what you've learned backwards and forwards, what you've learned from that product. Take your young salesperson, say, man, look, teach me this product. The ARV 8300, that's the last one I was really good at, and now we're at the LN 9710. I don't know nothing about that one. Get them to teach you that. Get them to say, all right, Pops, let me show you a little bit about this thing. And be willing to learn that technique. So learn that hot seller, and it'll bleed on other things because you know this one backwards and forwards. You could take a lot of that information and transfer it to the next thing also. Like I said, the buyer tendencies have changed. Also, what are the objections that you're getting hit with and you're not so good at handling them anymore? And what you're doing is, because you're mentally rigid in thought, you're like, man, back in the days, I could tell customers this and this happened, and now it ain't working no more. No, it's not working anymore. So it's time to adapt, okay? You got to YG your game, man. It's a young game. It's not a young man's game. It's a young game. You can be a part of the game if you're willing to move along with the game. It's a young man's game if you stand there and watch the game pass you by and are unwilling to adapt to those things. So you've got to be technically sound. What are customers hitting you with objection-wise? And you're not very good at countering those objections. Relearn those things. Start over. And I know it gets overwhelming because you really realize, without admitting to anybody else, but you can admit to me, you realize how far off track you've gotten, how far left behind you've been. But see, you could put a pin in the ground right now, that stake in the ground, and you don't let the game erode anymore. Now, the great thing about sales is you can use your experience not to judge, use your experience to leverage, man. Use it to leverage to get to, you're going to be able to handle more customers and more experiences in better ways because you've done this so many times, man. You're so good at it that you're able to handle those situations that experience has not yet taught the young salespeople. Dude, use that experience to leverage, man, to maneuver through. Be ahead of the game. Be thinking ahead. I've had this situation a time or 1,000 before, and I know where this customer is going, but I'm also going to stay fluid in thought and not be so judgmental thinking that, oh, they ain't gonna do that. No, you've got to stay fresh in that perspective. If you like what you saw, check out another episode, specially prepared right there for you. I think that you'll enjoy. Stay amazing, stay in the sales life.